Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
We are here live at Imperial Pizza in South Buffalo. I'm joined today's special guest, good buddy of mine, known for a long time, sports journalist, podcaster. If you happen to be watching this on the video side, author, a great book, Blood and Guts, which is funny because Tyler Dunne, I'm talking about, by the way, for people who are listening on the audio side. Tyler, what's going on? Not feeling the greatest, kind of powering through right now. I said Blood and Guts kind of is applying to your everyday life right now, man. How you doing?
Well, I scared you with the DM earlier today. I had to put it out there, hacking along, not feeling good. Then I went back and, looked up Michael Jordan, Utah Jazz. Game 5, I believe, was the flu game. And I said, you know what, if Michael Jordan can go for 30-plus with the flu, I got to be able to eat chicken wings and talk about football. So, yeah, no excuses. We're going to bring it. I promise you.
We'll give it a go, man. It's funny. I was talking to you. So Tyler and I had some wings before we started recording. By the way, the wings were the bomb here.
Incredible. First time here, and they delivered. Yeah, I'm not quite the wing connoisseur you are, but I try to be. I'm a wannabe, and those were great.
This is your first time ever in Imperial Pizza, period. This place is really nice, man. I mean, we talked about this last week. They remodeled it. A lot of TVs, a lot of space, plenty of great food options. This place is fantastic. But it's funny because we were talking while we were eating, and I told you I had Sal Capaccio and Tim Graham on not too long ago, and Tim was under the weather when he came in, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to power through. I'm not gonna be able to talk much. His throat was sore, just like yours is." And he had some wings. In fact, they were Cajun type wings, just like we had some hot Cajun wings. And lo and behold, at least for a good hour or so, he felt better, man. So maybe these wings there at Imperial got some kind of medicine in them, man.
I do think that there is something there. You're not going to feel good the next day, right? That might be a little rough.
Right.
But in the moment, absolutely good. I feel it right now. I'm feeling better already talking to you.
What are a few of your favorite places? I mean, everyone, I talk about mine all the time to the point that I'm sick of talking about them. But like, what are a couple of, we won't count this place. This place goes without saying. But what are a couple of your favorite go-to places for wings?
I mean, 9/11 Tavern.
Yeah,
that's number one. You have the go-to chicken wing power rankings for everyone locally and nationally that ever wants to consume wings. So I just asked. I totally forgot who you had number one. I'm glad to know that you had 9/11 number one, because I love a basic, hot, crispy, great texture, a lot of meat, satisfying. And I waited 2 hours for wings a couple weeks ago. I would have waited 5 hours for those wings.
Yeah.
They're unbelievable. So that's number one. I mean, Elmo's is right up there.
Sure.
Barbell's right up there. You can't really go wrong with those spots as well. But I feel like 9/11, man. Just make sure you go to the bathroom probably before, the bath. But you don't go to eat chicken wings. You don't go for the toilets, right?
A lot of these places that we talk about all the time, like 9/11 and Elmo's, you want to say, so everyone says they're Barbell. These places are overrated, but they live up to the hype. You know what I'm saying? They're like Patrick Mahomes. All the hype in the world about Mahomes, but he plays up to that standard. You know what I'm saying?
You can hear Chris Collins. We're talking about 9/11 Tavern, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. These wings hit the spot. But he would be right.
Have you always liked wings? Now, see, it's funny because when I was a kid, I barely ever ate wings. I didn't like the sauce. So if I ever did have a wing, it would be plain. It would just plain. I'm a very plain eater. It took me a long time to have any sauce. And then it would just be like maybe garlic parm, or then I would have mild, and I worked my way up to medium. And now I have hot, even though I'm usually a medium guy. Tyler, by the way, is definitely a hot guy.
Yeah.
Tyler likes to eat when he has his wings. But were you always a wing, like when you were growing up? Did you eat wings a lot? Were you always a wing guy?
Yeah, but you know what? I was a wuss. I went mild through high school. I remember my brother making fun of me, my younger brother, like, come on, Ty, step it up here. What are we doing? And I think as I lost hair on my head, as I maybe got a little hair on my chest and got a little older, a little wiser, you kind of work your way up the chicken wing, because you got to have some spice. You got to have some zap, some zing. You can still enjoy the wing when it's hot, But growing up in the Southern Tier, Randy's up the river was always the go-to wing spot. Just outside of St. Bonaventure University. So I remember going to Bonna games with my brother, my dad, and we worked that Randy's trip.
How far away did you grow up from here? Like right now, we're in the heart of South Buffalo here, Abbott Road. Like, and by the way, I know you're not too familiar with South Buffalo, but I say this all the time. There's two, and I'm sure where you grew up, you have a place or two that's like a staple of that neighborhood. Like in South Buffalo, for food, it's Imperial Pizza.
Yeah.
If you want to go get your drink on, it's Doc Sullivan's, a little bar down the road, a very popular Irish bar. But like, how far away did you grow up from here? Like, where are a couple of spots where you grew up?
No doubt. Yeah, I grew up in Salamanca, Great Valley, about an hour south of Buffalo. Went to school at Ellicottville, so we graduated probably like 45.
Yeah,
out in the farms of Ellicottville, Great Valley, New York. So yeah, grew up down there, loved it, played sports, football, basketball. We actually had our sectional championships here.
Be honest with the people. What type of football player were you in high school?
Oh, I can't talk about myself like that. Come on.
Were you all right? You're all right player.
I was all right. Quarterback. We won at the Ralph, so we had some memories.
Okay,
it was good. We took down Maple Grove, 14-6.
Played at the Ralph.
Yeah. Well,
Nice.
we you know what though, Pat? We ran the ball all the time, constantly. Sweep right, sweep left, fullback dives. That was our lead blocker on the sweep. But what we would do is bring everybody up to the line, the corners, the safeties, and then we had a speed receiver, and I would just throw a bomb to him, and it worked every game. So it was a simple formula, but people couldn't figure it out.
We're going to talk about your book. We're going to talk about your Substack. We're talking about your podcast. Talk some Bills. Talk some NFL.
Nobody wants Uncle Rico reliving their high school football days, right? And you know what? I talk about an hour.
No, I think it's. I do. I think it's fun, and I still look back fondly playing high school football.
Yeah.
I look back now, and I'm like, I wasn't as good as I probably thought I was at the time. In fact, I know I wasn't. But anyway, so last week I had Damone Harris on, who's from Buffalo, born and raised, went to Bishop Timon High School, walk on at UB, plays in the NFL. Now he's got a Super Bowl ring. He won a ring with the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of years ago. And when we were talking last week, I got a sense that the best times that he had in his life were high school. Like when he looks back at his memories, he probably looks back as fondly hanging out with his buddies, going to Bishop Timon High School as he does making great money right now and playing with some of the best football players on this earth. You know what I mean? When you look back, before we start talking about your career and some football and stuff, but when you look back, I'm sure you do every now and then, you know what I'm saying? You go back to high school and stuff. Do you feel that same way that Damone does? Like those are some of the best times of your life at that age?
I mean, hell yeah, absolutely. It was all downhill after high school football. Are you kidding me? I mean, yeah, hanging out with Brett Favre at his spot down in Mississippi was pretty cool, but nothing that I do in my current job writing about football will ever live up to actually playing the sport. I mean, that's kind of why I wrote the book too. I mean, it's just there's a purity to football that's just different than any other sport because it's just not for everybody, right? You can pick up a baseball bat or a basketball, go to the park, play with your buddies, but it's different when you put a helmet on, shoulder pads, and the injury risk is high.
Sure.
You're under the lights. The pressure is, at maximum capacity. I just loved all of that. There's something intoxicating about the sport, and I feel like you really learn life lessons in football that, I mean, you can still get in other sports,
Sure,
but it is just different in football. I remember Chris Borland even mentioned this once, Wisconsin linebacker, played a year with the San Francisco 49ers, and then shocked the world,
sure.
retiring early, and he cited concussion concerns. I remember writing stories at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel then, like, did he change football forever? We caught up a few years later. He's kind of finding his new purpose in life outside of football, and he did. I mean, he loves his life. But he even said there's just something different about playing on a football field, middle linebacker, and knowing, like, if I screw up my job, I might get myself decapitated. I might get my friend lit up.
Sure.
And that inherent pressure is a drug, and it's you want more of that. And that's why it's so hard for NFL players to transition to life outside of that world. It's its own, self-sustaining ecosystem. It's just different out there on the football field, the way that these guys hit each other at all these impossible angles. So, yeah, my roundabout answer tell you that nothing beats actually playing the sport. But high school football especially. I played 1 year of college ball at St. John Fisher, and it was fine. I wasn't very good. I'm a high school quarterback. I'm playing linebacker. I was probably like eighth string on the JV team. at Fisher. It's like, yeah, I'm going to stick with journalism.
Were you a good student in high school?
Yes. Yeah, I was pretty good. And then got to Fisher, got a 3.9 and decided to transfer to Syracuse. I wanted to go to Syracuse all along, honestly, for the journalism program, Daily Orange. But there was a small part of me that was sad, right, to give up football.
Sure.
Nothing tops high school ball.
I want to spend a couple minutes talking about your book. And look, I'm going to tell you straight up, confessionally, you're my boy. I'm one of your biggest fans. We've known each other for many, many years. I bought your book almost the day it came out. Not the day, but like within a week or so that it came out. Have not actually read it yet. I have been waiting on purpose. There's more to my story here. You're like, well, you didn't read my book?
Hey,
Come
man,
on.
Life happens.
No, well, it's not even that. I'm waiting for an opportunity where I could deep dive and not be distracted by anything else. And it's coming next week. This is the point that I'm getting to. I'm going to Florida next week. I got to take a connecting flight, and then I'm stuck in like Chicago or Baltimore or something like that for 3.5 hours. So that's going to be my entire day there and coming back. I'm going to stick my face into this book, and I'm that I'm looking forward to reading it. I wanted to ask you, where did you get the inspiration to write this book and more specifically about this topic, tight ends?
Well, thank you so much, Pat. I appreciate that, and hope you enjoy. Dicka, Shockey, Gronk. You can jump around too.
Me and Joe Pizzell and Buffalo Wins. We're gonna talk. I know he's read it, so once I do, we'll have a show.
Beautiful.
We'll definitely talk about it. But go ahead.
I mean, the inspiration is kind of what we're talking about here. I've got a deep love for the sport. I feel like, football has its flaws. The NFL absolutely has its flaws, but at its core, there's something special about the game and how it's, like I said, it's not for everybody. George Kittle put it perfectly. He's like, you go out there at training camp and you get into a fight, fists are flying. You want to beat the hell out of your teammates. You go into the locker room, you slip into the cold tub, and you're talking about each other's families. It's not normal,
right?
It's right. It's just these are the modern day gladiators because it's not for everybody. So I've always wanted to write a book concerning pro football. So that kind of got the wheels turning. And then you think, okay, what is the one position, the one player that kind of embodies everything we love about the sport? And to me, it's the tight end. You've got to block, you've got to run up the seam and catch a clutch touchdown on 3rd and 8 with 70,000 screaming fans, right? It's the grit, it's the grime, it's the glory. It's all of that kind of wrapped into one. And you've got some wild personalities. So I thought it'd be fun to just, go down to Mike Dicka's golf course, talk to him while he's having a stogie, go to Miami Beach, throw drinks back with Jeremy Shockey, Jackie Smith in St. Louis, unbelievable, Gronk, Tony Gonzalez. I didn't know what to expect from Tony Gonzalez. He was very polished on television.
Sure, yeah.
He was the most unfiltered tight end of them all.
Really?
He didn't give a shit. Oh, man, his stories,
wow.
I think are going to blow people's minds, especially when it comes to a certain former Buffalo Bills coach, Mike Mularkey, and they nearly threw down in the locker room. Oh, man, he wanted to beat the hell out of Mike Mularkey. And I talked to Mike Mularkey, too. He had so many words, he felt the same. They, I mean, not to go down that road, but like, Mularkey was an old school tight end.
Mm-hmm.
He believed the tight end should be exactly that, tight in the line, blocking. And Atlanta trades for Tony Gonzalez. Mularkey's thinking, why in the hell did you give me Tony Gonzalez? Tony Gonzalez, after his first meeting with Mike Mularkey, watching clips of Mark Bruner beat people up in the trenches, is thinking, why in the hell did you trade for me? They didn't even want each other, right? It was like a doomed arranged marriage. So it all kind of came to a head when Tony Gonzalez is stuck on reception 999 for his career, and Mularkey isn't calling plays for him in a meaningless game against Tampa Bay. So,
oh wow,
yeah, they clashed in the locker room. I'll just leave it there. There's more to the story, but yeah, I think that's where it started, Pat. And a lot of it too is like everybody. I watch these games on Sunday. I feel like my grandfather now. I can still remember growing up in high school. Oh, Huey. I mean, he'd watch these games and he'd blast the refs. Oh, these refs are driving. I feel like that now. I want to throw the remote through the TV. I mean, you don't even know what you can do as a defensive player trying to sack the quarterback. On the back end, what can a corner do, a safety do? And, the tight end, it's kind of preserved there. And Rob Gronkowski made that point. Like, he really felt like he fought for the good of the game with his style of play, because a tight end, you can still run people over. And it's like a car crash. We can't take our eyes off it. We love it. Hey, if it was flag football, nobody watch.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
I know the NFL is kind of, playing footsie with flag football right now. That's what the Pro Bowl is. Good luck taking blocking and tackling out of the sport. I mean, they're trying to find a middle ground that doesn't exist, in my opinion. With all of it, you know it when you see it, like the old saying goes, right? You know what a roughing the passer is when you see it. Yet they're trying to kind of find this utopian middle ground, and the overcorrection's been insane. So definitely within the book, you kind of feel how I think about all that.
Talk about how long did it take you from the inception of this book when you said, this is the book that I want to write? Okay. From when you made that decision, the process of putting everything together to the book being available right now, literally for somebody to go online and to purchase. What was that process like? How long did the process take? And just take us inside a little bit the process of actually writing a book. It's one thing. You've been a reporter all your life. You've been a sports journal. Write beautiful long form stories, stuff like that. But writing a book, I would imagine, because I can only imagine because I've never tried. It's a whole different animal having to sit down and pen a book. Tell about that process a little bit.
It is, man. It's an animal, a different animal.
Yeah.
I think I had an amazing publisher, 12 Publishing. Sean Desmond was awesome, an incredible literary agent. Daniel Greenberg was great, and I that relationship helped a lot. I approached it like I approached my current job. I've always approached covering sports. Like each chapter is its own long form story. So each chapter features a tight end from Dallas Clark to Jimmy Graham to Rob Gronkowski, Jackie Smithers, 15 altogether. So that helped. I mean, that definitely allowed me to jump around a little bit and then weave a narrative together after the fact. I'd still suggest reading it, from the front of the book to the back
Sure.
to kind of track the evolution. But that helped. I signed the book contract, I want to say July of last year. And so Serafino, our son, was born that same month. So we've got a newborn. We've got Ella, our daughters, 1 going on 2, going on 3. It was chaos in the Dunne household, and I'm unbelievably fortunate to have an amazing wife who Gina.
Yeah,
You knew her before.
Gina's awesome.
We've even met. So she took out a lot at home, and you know what? That probably what eats up a lot of time, and every writer will tell you the same thing. It's the transcribing of interviews.
Mhm.
First of all, I should backtrack. I traveled around the country. I wanted to talk to these tight ends in person. I didn't want to just do it solely off of research or Zooms or phone calls.
Right.
I want it to be like in Mike Dicka's element, right? In Tony Gonzalez's element, Shockey, all of these guys, make it as real as possible. And they were unbelievably accommodating, right? I didn't know what to expect. They were all about this project, wanted to give me all the time I could ask for. Even Kittle during the season is dropping everything to talk for a couple hours. So that helped. And then it's a matter of, okay, transcribe, whatever it turned out to be, 500,000 words. It eats up a lot of time. So
a lot of time.
I think for the most part, I'd wake up at like 3 a.m. and get that pot of coffee on and just start transcribing, start writing. And it just kind of was piece by piece.
Time management's got to be, really strict when you're doing something like this as a project, because you have your own business, go along that you're
right
on, and a book and a wife and children, like you said, young children. It really is, man. That time management is everything. I also want to talk, and by the way, if you happen to be watching this on the video side right now, I got to get one of these sweet hoodies.
I should have brought you one. What the hell?
Sorry, next time. One of my favorite things about you want to hear that, you hear the term all the time, Ty, where people say, well, I bet it myself. You hear it all the time. A lot of times it's true, too. Your case, like quite literally, that's what you did. I mean, like quite literally. For people, everybody pretty much knows, but people don't. Ty's covered the Green Bay Packers. Ty's worked for the Buffalo News. You were a features writer for like 4 years at the Bleacher Report. And then you started Substack, which again, you literally betted on yourself that your brand, your style, you're your own boss. This launched in late, like 2020, I believe, right?
Yeah, right, November 2020.
Talk about, you don't give every single little detail that went into it, but what was the straw for you? That what made you say that this is what I want to do, and I think that I could do it well and be successful and build a nice base of subscribers. People are going to want to read my work.
I mean, breaking news, sports media, print media, not in a good place.
No.
Right? Websites, newspapers,
Right.
across the board are trying to figure out how to get people to pay for content.
Mhm.
And I saw it firsthand at Bleacher Report. I don't even really want to say a bad word. They gave me a great opportunity at Bleacher Report. Enjoyed it. Was able to kind of travel the country and
Yeah.
build up a Rolodex. Do a lot of big features. Like the Green Bay story, obviously in 2019, did really well. And I kind of figured out who I wanted to be in this business, and that's long form feature stories exclusively.
Mhm.
As much as the beat was fun, podcasting was fun. I just reached a point where, you know what, I'm just gonna do my own thing, cover the NFL the way I believe it should be covered, through that long form humanizing lens.
Yeah.
Go beyond the press conference, the poll tested, sanitized bullshit that is pre-planned in advance. I just that's not how the NFL should be covered. There's a real NFL behind the scenes that fans deserve to know more about.
Mhm.
Everybody here at Imperial, Western New York, beyond, they're the ones filling that stadium. They're the ones forking over their hard-earned money to support all of these NFL teams. They deserve more than just drivel, insipid cliches. So I just figured, all right, I'm going to start Go Long. You know what it is going in, right? The stories will be long at golongtd.com, and let's sit down with these players over wings. That's what me and Damar Hamlin did. We got Wings and Elmos. Let's really get to know the players, beyond the locker room, beyond the press conference, and I think that's really the formula. It's a lot of profiles on players, coaches, what have you, but also the inner workings of teams, the deep dives, and kind of like digging into those corners. And I think that people here in Buffalo have been unbelievable, right? I don't exist without the support locally.
Sure.
Bills fans who remember me from the Buffalo News days, Packer fans who remember me from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel days. So definitely skew with those teams, but it's an NFL site. I mean, I was at the Super Bowl in Phoenix for Philly and KC. Was at the Combine. Definitely think that there's still a niche for long form writing throughout the whole league. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, I'd rather sink or swim doing the job the way I want to do it, as opposed to constantly needing to redefine the job and myself for somebody else.
This might be a question that only interests me, like these type of things, but coming up with the name Go Long form writing, that part. At what point did you come up with that? Like, did you think of that? Did you come up with that? Did it come out of nowhere? Were you spending a lot of time trying to think of potential names for your Substack, because your name's going to be associated with it, or did that pop quick and easy for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really successful Substacks out there, and writers will just use their name. Like I could not do that. I don't know. It would be a little strange for me, I think.
Yeah.
But I was driving on 219 going north. I don't even know where I was going, and it just kind of hit me out of nowhere. Like throwing the football with my dad in the backyard. Some of my best memories are just that, right? Playing catch with your dad, and that's something you always did, right? Go long. And it kind of hit me, all right.
Was it nerve-wracking in this term? People who know you, know your work, and followed you for your career, it's no secret. If you wanted to, you could have went and found another outlet to employ you. You're an employable sports journalist is what I'm getting at here. And you start your own. You know what I mean? But there's no guarantee. When you started Go Long, there's no guarantee that you would have one paid subscriber, let alone X amount of whoever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Was that a little bit like, what was that time like for you? Like maybe mentally a little bit, just a little nerve-wracking. Like, I really hope that, the work I've done through the years, the name I've made for myself, that people are going to buy into what I'm offering right now. What was that experience like? Was it tense at all at any point early on, at least?
It was, for sure. I mean, you don't know, right? I mean, I think I covered the sport in a unique way that people can't get elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't know. I mean, it's hard for people to bust out that credit card and punch in a number. We all live that lifestyle. Like, me and my wife just ripped through a great show on HBO Max, The Outsider. Really good show. I enjoyed it. I'm like, man, do I really want to keep this? Is there more on it? Of course there's more. There's a million great shows on HBO. So I ended up putting it back in. But just that act I get it. It's hard for people to take that leap and trust something that they're investing their money in, but more importantly, their time. Everybody's so busy all the time. You've got to be doing 10 things at once in 2023. I get all that. I'm asking people to sit down and read a story for 15, 20 minutes. So I didn't know how people would react to that, but I knew it didn't need to take the world by storm, that this could be a niche. There are people out there who want to learn and are curious, and they'll carve out a little bit of their day to read. So I just kind of trusted that, and it worked out. I think what helped me, Pat, was I couldn't launch Go Long until November 2020 contractually. So Bleacher Report kind of got everybody in one fell swoop, and we just a lot of people had to wait until a certain date before you could do anything non-compete wise. So that gave me time to plan, right, and figure out what I'm going to do and really put a plan of attack together, get some story ideas ready to roll. I think the two-parter I had on Josh Allen really helped. I don't think many fans knew that this was a team with an owner who loved Patrick Mahomes before anybody else did. And then I did a big takeout on Mike Zimmer, a story on the Green Bay Packers. So kind of coming out of the gates, guns ablazing, definitely helped as well.
We talked about it over some wings here, which again, the wings are really good. But one of the things we were discussing at dinner tonight was your story about 13 seconds. And Joe from Queens, I call him Joe from Queens, at Buffalo Wins on Twitter, who I did tell you, if you want to know the best compliment that anyone can give Tyler Dunne right now, is that Joe likes him. Because Joe don't like anybody in the sports media. No offense to everyone. I love a lot.
I like you, Joe. I like you. He's a Go Long OG.
He is a Go Long.
Who came up with the idea for the Zoom happy hours. I have to give credit where credit's due. That is all Joe. Good dude.
We literally dedicated an entire episode of this podcast talking about your story, because at the time nobody, and it was frustrating. I mean, I think Joe's a little, he exaggerates and gets a little fired up at the media. I'm not like that, man. I love most of these guys and women who cover sports around here. But anyway, he had a good point, because nobody was talking about this at the time. Like, where are some answers to what happened? People had opportunities, and Ty was the one person who dug in and put a feature story out. That was, I don't know. I think that was, if there wasn't already a turning point before, I think that was one of your turning points for sure. But a lot of people really respected and enjoyed that story, even if it's not what they wanted to read, because it wasn't rosy and cheery. You know what I mean?
But fans wanted to know what the hell happened.
Yes.
They deserve to know what the hell happened.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking multiple generations of tortured Bills fans here. You could go before the Super Bowl losses, right? But the Super Bowl losses, Music City Miracle, the drought, all this. And you've got a team and a quarterback that was Super Bowl caliber.
Yeah.
Josh Allen was on an all-time heater. He was not going to be stopped. This offense was not going to be stopped. Loved what they got going in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, it's a fun freaking team. And I went down there a bunch this past season. I don't see them going to Orchard Park and winning in an AFC Championship game. It would have been, I guess my point being, Pat, like, the fans deserve more than the word execution. I just thought that was a weak, unbelievably weak explanation for what happened in an all-time meltdown of a loss for the Buffalo Bills, because you cover this game long enough, you know what that's code for. A lot of coaches, I heard this in Green Bay all the time, talking to Mike McCarthy, Tom Capers. When they use the word execution, it's, what was called, what was right. On the field, it wasn't executed. That's on the players. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm thinking, all right, is he just kind of being like that with us in the media, with fans? Of course, internally, players and coaches know what happened.
Sure.
They deserve it. And they didn't know. They didn't have a clue. And you're not going to watch film of a playoff loss, right? You're cleaning out your locker room. You're getting out of there the next day. But still, there were guys in the team that were upset that they didn't really get closure, and they wanted to talk about it. So we talked to them about it and just tried to piece together what happened. I think there's still a lot of confusion as to what happened, but yeah, they on that kickoff coverage, and I want people to subscribe and read the story. I don't want to give too much away, right? But they believed it was a squib.
Right.
It was not, obviously. And then the defensive coverage, I think the DBs were lined up in about 5 zip codes away from the stadium.
One of the things that I love that you do with Go Long that I respect a lot is you reinvest in your work. Here's what I mean. You have X amount of paid subscribers. If I did the same thing and I'm on X amount of paid subscribers, I'd be counting my money. I'd be going to the bank. I'd be Diamond Joe when I walked in Imperial Pizza, buying beers for everybody. Tyler is constantly going on the road, finding stories to do, traveling. Jeronic's obviously, your expense, you're reinvesting in what you're making and stuff. I respect that a lot. Just sit at home and write all your stories from home and make a couple phone calls. I mean, you're on the road and you're traveling and you're doing a lot.
Again, I mean, I'm fortunate with Gina's able to stay at home with the kids. That allows me to do it. Sure. She's unbelievable. But I really do believe you've got to be there if you care. You're going to learn so much more about a player's life at dinner, sharing food. People are happy when they eat food. And they get a couple drinks in them, right?
Yeah.
They're going to open up. It's just I feel like that you're going to make a totally different story if you're actually in person with a player than you would on a phone call, on a Zoom. It's just it's night and day, and it's absolutely worth, as you put, reinvesting in the company. I really thought it was important to be at the Super Bowl, regardless of who was in it.
Yeah.
Let's cover this big event. We're going to be there to cover it day in and day out. Same with the combine, but yeah, mainly with these long form stories. And there's a lot of ways you can do these type of stories, right? I try not to solely depend on teams for access. I mean, agencies. I've known enough players myself. I can reach out directly. So it kind of is.
You have kind of a legendary Rolodex, by the way. That's well known in local sports media circles. I've heard that an awful lot, by the way. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I feel like an old man at this point. So I better have a big Rolodex.
In all seriousness, I feel like what you're doing now, what you started, what you did, is I think you're a little bit ahead of the curve right now. When you come, I think in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, I think you're going to start to see more and more people who have made a nice name for themselves. Maybe there were, whether it's somebody from the Buffalo News or somebody from Sports Illustrated or, tons of outlets like that. They're going to say, you know what, I want to do my own thing, man. I want to have my own Substack. And I know people are doing it now, varying levels of success. But I think in the coming years, I think you're going to start to see less and less talented, well-known people working at Sports Illustrated and the Bleacher Report and all these places. And I think you're going to start to see more of what you're doing now.
I appreciate that. I think it's the future. I'm obviously biased, but I love Substack. Totally. It's a great platform. It's so user-friendly, which is what writers want. Technologically, what you have going on here with your podcast, I'll just say it blows us away, right? We've got one mic and some headphones, and we're throwing back a few beers at Fatty.
I love it, though. We talked about this. I love your podcast in part for that. I mean, I love the content, but I actually love that concept. It feels like two dudes over some beers with sometimes, I'm sorry, somewhat shitty equipment. You know what I'm saying? But it feels like an authentic podcast. Podcasting has become being in a TV studio in some cases. You know what I'm saying? It's like, might as well just have your own TV show. It's
totally.
So,
but yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think that's the future. I think that it's, I want all of these newspapers to succeed. I want all these sites to succeed. I want there to be this insatiable desire from a general populace to learn more about their favorite teams and players and pay for it. But Twitter has made us a dumber species in general. Social media has. Don't get me going on Twitter.
No.
But it's just everybody wants stuff free. And I'm kind of relying on the other end of the spectrum. I guess all that fast food is important. We want to fatten up on the double quarter pounder of cheese, and we're refreshing Twitter all day, and we want the updates in real time. But I want to go that 24-ounce steak end of the spectrum, and we're gonna give you quality.
Sure.
You're gonna have to pay a little bit for it, but we're gonna go there. We're gonna talk to these people, and we're gonna spend days and weeks working on something. And I've been unbelievably fortunate. There's enough people out there that it supports our family.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna take a real quick break. More with Tyler Dunne from Go Long right after this quick break. All right, we're back here at Imperial Pizza. By the way, I got to throw this out there. I think I forgot this last week. We were talking about this at dinner. Their prices are their prices. You're going to pay for good food, good service, good atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? They're not the most expensive place, but they're not the cheapest either. However, I'm telling you, bro, their lunch specials right here, 11 to 4, 5 wings, and a beef on whack or a hamburger and a pint of beer, $12. Or you get a half sub with 5 wings and a pint of beer for $12. Imperial Pizza as the best lunch special.
I had to look at it for myself. I thought you were
Anyone I know,
BSing
man.
me. That's a
No,
steal.
it's great, man. I really do. I really love this place. And thank you again, Imperial, for sponsoring this show, and for Tyler for being here tonight. All right, so we're talking about the writing stuff. Obviously, audio stuff interests me greatly as well. You have done now 2 seasons with your podcast, but branching off from that, the Isaiah McKenzie Show, part of your brand. You've done that for 2 seasons now. I watch it all the time on YouTube. And a couple months ago, I did actually go to Mister's, and I caught you and Isaiah doing a show. Talk to me a little bit about Isaiah. Again, you've been doing it for 2 seasons now. I think he's an interesting character, and I mean that in a complimentary way. I like him as a person. He entertains me. It feels like on your show, he's pretty candid. You know how it is with athletes. Sometimes it might take a little bit for them to get loose and give more informative answers, but he gets there. And when he does,
yeah.
When he
does,
he gives them really, and he's pretty candid, pretty blunt, man. On a funny side, and also sometimes on a serious side. When you had an episode when you guys were discussing what happened with DeMar, I mean, he was very, candid about that. I was like, whoa, he's talking about, the dilemma about playing again and stuff like that. So really interesting show. But talk about Isaiah, just like what it's been like these last 2 seasons being with him on the show.
No doubt. I mean, in the same vein, just wanting to give fans something different, something real, and so fortunate that Mr. stepped up. I mean, they journalistically, right? I mean, I'm not paying Isaiah a dime. I just want to be the host, put it on the site, give fans a side of the game that they can't get anywhere else. And Mr. is willing to be that host for us, which is great. I mean, they were so good to work with these past 2 seasons. I guess Isaiah, I hear that a lot. Why Isaiah? How did that start?
How did it start? I'm going to ask you. It's not the first person to ask you, but I'll ask it.
So I got to know him for a feature that first year, Start and Go Long, ahead of the AFC Championship game against Kansas City, I believe. And I found his life story to be just wild. And where he comes from, I mean, he'd see dead bodies on his doorstep. He later on the show told the story of a bullet like literally grazing his skin. I mean, a centimeter the other direction. And we never know who Isaiah is.
Sure.
I mean, that's compelling in itself. But his personality, you just put it great. Like can seem quiet at first.
Yeah.
And, short-winded at first. But once he gets rolling,
right?
Once he gets opened up, he's legendary.
Yeah.
I mean, he came on one of my first happy hours for the subscribers and told this crazy story of when he might have been 10, 11 years old, the prank he pulled on his grandmother where he pretended to be dead, like in the bathtub, like covered himself in fake blood. And he waited for the cops to come, and the house is just full of people, waited for everybody to be right there, and then just stepped up and said, "Hey guys," that's diabolical. I mean, it still cracks me up. So I don't know. Like that off season, I was trying to think of a player, a personality, somebody that would just want to take fans along the ups and downs of a season, right? Something real, start to finish, and what it's like to play in the NFL. And there's been ups and downs with Isaiah, and he relives it all authentically that setting. And I think this past season especially, he was way more open than he was even the first season. And he was great the first season talking about, why I didn't go to Notre Dame because sex. He was told you can't have sex.
Yeah, I remember that.
Decommitted.
I watched almost. Yeah. I've seen almost every episode. He also had a really funny story this past season about the courtship of his girlfriend.
Oh my God! Which congratulations.
Yeah,
they're engaged.
Yes. I did not know that.
It's official.
That is awesome.
He is in love. I mean, he is deep in love, and she is a doll, unbelievable person. She's at all the shows as well. But that story, definitely people. I mean, it'd probably take us an hour to tell that story. It's worth digging through the archives.
Go through the archives and find that episode. It might have been the same episode as the DeMar Hamlin one. I think it might have been.
Boy, they all blur together. You probably know better than me.
I'm not positive, but I think so. But anyway, yeah, with him, you could clearly tell the first couple minutes, a little bit short-winded, and then he gets into the show. And then by the end, because you always give the audience opportunity to ask questions, which I think is really, really cool. And he's the one who's like, all right, I got more. Come on. I got more time.
Exactly.
He's the one. Usually the athlete's the one who's like, all right, I'm on a real tight schedule. I got to get out of here. But he's the one who's kind of imploring people. Got to ask you, and this is kind of going to be a little bit of a segue into some Bills talk. Do you think there's obviously you're hopeful that there's going to be a season 3 of the Isaiah McKenzie show? Are you get a sense that there's going to be a season 3 of the Isaiah McKenzie show? And by that I mean, do you anticipate Isaiah McKenzie being back this year at Buffalo? He is under contract. We'll put that out there, and it's not like some enormous cap hit either. So
Right. He doesn't make nearly as much money as he could have made for another team.
Sure,
he
absolutely.
chose to stay in
Yep,
Buffalo
he did,
for less money. I mean,
and he signed early too.
exactly. I think, right, they have an out, I believe, in his contract if they want to get out of it. Why would you, though? It's obviously they've got to draft a wide receiver. I think, breaking news, the Buffalo Bills need a wide receiver. And they haven't taken one in the first 3 rounds ever with this coach and GM. So how does that affect Isaiah McKenzie if you bring in 1, 2, 3 receivers? I think he still has a role. I mean, he can be a nifty, useful utility knife for you in your offense. And in terms of being the slot guy, it just didn't work out like he had hoped. I mean, training camp, he's lighting it up. He's a star of training camp. And sorry, I'm hacking a lung here.
Well, fight through it, baby. We're good.
All right, Jordan, Utah. Let's do this. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I feel like he probably caught a lot more. Obviously, I do the show with him, so maybe I'm being a big softy here, Pat. Yeah, he had a few drops, but Isaiah was pretty honest. He said he was open a lot.
He was.
And when you look at that all 22, when you zoom out, and maybe it was because he had a drop or two, Josh just wasn't throwing him the ball. I think that the offense under Ken Dorsey was different than Brian Daboll, where it seemed very boom or bust, right? It's either big plays or nothing, as opposed to a rhythmic, timing-based, one play setting up another with Daboll. I mean, there was a flow to that offense. This offense really didn't have that flow. That affects the slot receiver in it, because that slot receiver is basically a running game. I mean, you're trying to get 6-7 yard chunks down the field. They didn't have that. So maybe it was scheme, but he's so beloved in the locker room. He's such a leader. Guys love him. I mean, that stuff matters too for a team that is trying to win a Super Bowl. I think he'll be around. Yeah, I think you'll see a season 3.
I hope so, man. I like him. I like him on the field, and I like him off the field, man. And I do have a soft place for people that I like, frankly. Do you feel like there's a lot of pressure right now on Brandon Beane to keep up with the Mahomeses and the Burrows of the league? As we take this late Thursday night live, nothing has broken any Bills news. We've heard reports, Adam Schefter put it out there, that it's expected that Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Poyer are both going to leave. I don't think that's would be a surprise. But do you feel like, let's just assume that does happen, do you feel like there's pressure on Brandon Beane to figure out ways to, you might not spend $15-17 million on one player like you would if you do re-sign Tremaine Edmonds, but he's got to figure out some ways to keep up with the Joneses, because we saw an offense against Cincinnati just flat out. I know there's some variables and excuses, but they put up 10 points. They got to do something about that.
They've got to start drafting better.
Yeah.
Right? I imagine Beane regrets what he said about Jamar Chase and how that kind of took on a life of its own. Like, I don't want to suck bad enough to get Jamar Chase. It's like, look at the Chiefs 2022 draft. You had contributions from the first round all the way down to Pacheco in the 7th round. I mean, DBs picking off passes, making Joe Burrow's life hell. A running back who runs like his life depends on it. Sky Moore made plays. And a receiver, I don't know. They've got it. I mean, everybody knows this, but once you pay the quarterback, it's harder to just hand out blank checks like the Bills were able to do for a while, which means the guys that you draft, even if they're in the 4th, even the 5th round, they have to become starters early in their careers, and they're just not getting that. I think Mahomes and Burrow combined for, gosh, I want to say like 120-something dropbacks the last 3 playoffs, and the Bills have, 4 sacks, 5 sacks?
Yeah.
And that's with premium draft capital. So the Von Miller injury obviously hurt. He was playing incredible. He was worth the contract when he was healthy. But even outside of that, the players that you've drafted, just Gregory Rousseau showed promise. Maybe he does take a big step. They're going to need it. But Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, Ed Oliver. I mean, I'll even put linebacker Tremaine Edmonds in there. I know he's a polarizing figure. I'll probably do a whole show on him, but when it mattered against playoff teams, he's getting bowled over against Cincinnati. Ed Oliver is getting bowled over. These are hot picks. These are core players. So are we going to judge the Bills on regular season success? I feel like we're past that division. They've had 13-win seasons. That's great. But these Super Bowl windows, they come and go. You've got to demand more out of your team, and they're going to have to demand more, and it's going to be tough because they don't have the money to just go shopping this week.
Do you feel like, what do you think the vibe will be with Bills fans right now if they lose Evans, they lose Poyer, and they really don't do much in free agency? Do you feel like fans are going to be frustrated over the and I'm not saying necessarily that it's the wrong approach to not do a lot in free agency, but if they lose 2 key players and they replace them with 9 or dozen depth guys, the Jameson Crowders of the world, what do you think the vibe's going to be right now with fans? Because I feel like there's a little pent-up frustration that maybe hasn't fully come to the surface. But to your point now, regular season success shouldn't be the judging point anymore.
I think fans will be frustrated because remember last year, 13 seconds, just, reaching into the chest and grabbing your heart out kind of loss. Yeah. It went, that pain kind of went away quickly when Von Miller signed. That gave everybody a reason to get pretty jacked up. Yeah. They're not going to be able to add a player that way this year. So what will fans think? I don't know. I think the Bills fans are pretty smart. I know Edmonds is, there's some stands out there. They love him, and he's a good player. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I think that the memory of the Cincinnati game, similar to the memory of the Chief losses and the Houston loss, you've got to that game is so much more important than anything that happened in the regular season. I don't think it's the end of the world if you lose Tremaine Edmonds. I love Jordan Poyer. I think they should have found a way to get a deal done because you don't know life without him. It's not going to be the end of the world without a safety at his age, but you've got to have somebody ready to replace him. And they don't know if DeMar Hamlin is a totally different story. You don't know if he's going to even play football.
Right, sure.
You have to draft a safety, draft a linebacker. You're going to have to find a lot of players in the draft. You know what? They're going to have to get year 1 to year 2 jumps out of guys, year 2 to year 3 jumps. James Cook is going to have to take on a bigger role. I think a player like that can get you excited if you're a Bills fan. You can expect a big jump out of somebody who did a little bit last season, and now they're going to be counted on to do a lot.
If you're Brandon Beane, are you allocating resources that you do have, and there won't be no Von Miller signings, and I take him for his word when it comes to that this year. But you lose Poyer, Edmonds, whatever. If you're Brandon Beane, are you allocating more resources to the offense? Do you want to get better on offense, even if it comes at the expense of, maybe you're not as good on defense because you replace Edmonds and Poyer with lesser than players? But then you got to also look, Ty, that let's not forget who the head coach is. And is he going to be that kind of coach that's going to say, all right, man, I'm going to take some lumps on defense, but my offense is going to score a lot more points? I don't know if that fits here.
I think the Buffalo Bills' success is going to come down to a philosophical change. Go back to that Cincinnati game, end of the first half, 4th and 10, 4th and 11, but you're in Cincinnati territory. Your defense cannot stop anybody. Joe Burrow is completing passes to 7 different receivers before the first quarter is even over. Mm-hmm. Joe Mixon in that running game just embarrassing you up front. You're not going to stop anybody. And you punt. You try to pin them and just get out of the half alive. That was an opportunity to try to redictate the terms of the game. Make this a shootout. Go for it. You might not get it. Well, you might get it. You've got Josh freaking Allen. Think positively. Score, get the ball to start the second half, score again, make Cincinnati chase you. And it was the same thing, the last play of the third quarter, so basically the fourth quarter when it's 4th and 2, and you punt. You really think you're going to get 2 stops in the fourth quarter? Absolutely not. I mean, I think it was a failure to have a sense of the moment, the game, and your own identity as a team. And he's a defensive coach, and this is what you saw out of the Marvin Lewises, the Marty Schottenheimers. These are really good coaches. John Fox. These are guys who have won a lot of games, but you've got a window with a top 5, maybe a top 3 quarterback. You need to think offense in every possible way, whether it's in the moment in the game or right now in the offseason and how you build your roster. And they've been thinking defense for 5 years. They've been drafting defensive players nonstop. That tells you Sean McDermott's fingerprints are all over these decisions, right? I mean, remember, he brought Brandon Beane in. But I do think that everybody has to come to an agreement that now, what more proof do you need add a weapon. I can't even get mad at Gabe Davis for the 3rd and 2 before that 4th and 2, the deep ball where he has a tomahawk out of his hands.
Right.
I mean, he's a 4th-round pick. What more can you ask out of a 4th-round pick than what he did this season? It's on management. It's on coaching. They got to look in the mirror and realize their best chance to win a Super Bowl is by outscoring the other team, not by playing coffin corner field position ball.
One of the things when it comes to Jordan Poyer, I mean, he said it on his own podcast, so it's not like rumor and speculation. He said it with his own mouth. Taxes in New York, all the taxes that I don't
Awful.
Taking
I'm with you, Jordan.
Half my money. Do you get a sense from you know a lot of players? Obviously, like I said, Jordan's talking about on his podcast. Obviously, his wife Rachel is heavily accentuating that on Twitter, and which is becoming Twitter could be an ugly place. We both know that. But anyway, my question for you is: do you get a sense that with players that is like a really big deal? Like if all things are equal and Jordan can get X amount from Buffalo and X amount from Miami, but Miami's not going to take, he's not going to in Florida, not going to lose those taxes. Do players make decisions? Do you think they do make decisions ultimately based on that? Because if so, I mean, that hurts teams like Buffalo.
They do. They
Yeah.
absolutely do. I mean, you couple that with the fact that it's, I think in the forecast, at least down to the southern tier, my dad just told me 4 to 8 inches of snow tomorrow. I mean, it's March, for the love of God.
Hate it.
Oh, my God. It's everything. But yeah, the taxes, give you a name, Chase Edmonds. I did a story on him at Go Long ahead of the season. Did not work out for him in Miami. He's trying to pick things up in Denver now, but he thought he was going to be a Buffalo Bill. And when we sat down and talked about it, he said, yeah, I loved everything about the team, Josh Allen, the offense, my role. He goes, then I took a look at the taxes in New York State versus the taxes in Florida. And I'm not going to lie, I chose the Miami Dolphins. I mean, that was like the number one reason why.
Wow.
The taxes. Granted, he loved at the time the offense, Mike McDaniel, and how they kind of use their backs. That stuff mattered as well. But in the moment, yeah, I think it is, and it's one of those things you can only figure out anecdotally, and it's something that a lot of these players aren't going to broadcast. But can you get Kathy Hochul on the phone and talk about his taxes? I mean, he said it tongue in cheek, but he's probably drives him nuts a little bit too.
Sure. I look at a player like Jordan Poyer for what it's worth, and I'm a big Jordan Poyer fan. I always have been. 6 really good years in Buffalo, kind of an outcast in Cleveland. And now he's at a point where if he were to re-sign with Buffalo, and let's just say, I don't think he's going to, but if he did, and he has 2 more great years in Buffalo, and because if he stays healthy, he's still a really good player. He's probably going up someday on that Wall of Fame 15 years from now. 8 great years in Buffalo, tons of stats, leader, great player. You go to Miami or Dallas, you're just another good player on a team your last 1 or 2 years, but you're getting paid. I understand it. It's easy for me to say that because I'm not losing a couple $1 million a year, you know what I'm saying, by going to Buffalo instead of Dallas or Miami. But I kind of wish players, especially if they're rich players, because I'm going to be honest. Like I said, between what Jordan said on the podcast and what Rachel was fighting with some Bills, not even Bills fans, just fans about with New York State and taxes, it's a bad look when rich people are complaining about it. I mean, I'm not saying don't make your decisions based on it, but when you're outwardly going at people who are poor and can barely scrape up enough money to go get season tickets to watch you guys play football, it feels like it's kind of a bad look to be outwardly bitching about taxes. Like I wish that players like Jordan or just other players on other teams would kind of factor in legacy if it's even close to equal. I mean, if you're talking $5 million difference, it's one thing, but if it's close, don't you feel like if it was you, wouldn't you care about that legacy? It's easy for us to say, sure,
but the legacy matters. You're right. I saw it often in Green Bay where Greg Jennings, he went to the Minnesota Vikings. All he did was answer our questions to the media. I called him up, asked him about Aaron Rodgers. He answered honestly, and he's for a while he got into the Packers Hall of Fame, but he was kind of a pariah. I mean, fans would attack this guy who literally was a Super Bowl hero, had the play of the game in the Super Bowl, and here you have Aaron Rodgers calling him quote unquote irrelevant. I mean, just insane for just being honest and sharing his own stories. But yeah, things can take a turn, especially when you go to a team in the division, a hated rival. The Bills and Dolphins are going to be competing for the division title this year. We'll see what happens with Tua, but these things. I'm not saying that he has gone that road by being honest and talking about taxes and Buffalo
Right.
and the weather, but I don't think he liked it here for outside of football stuff. I think he loved the football stuff, but all the other stuff, yeah, he's made it very clear he did not like it here.
And I think that's a family decision to not like it here too.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like the legacy, like this maybe it doesn't matter to him.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't. I go back and
I'm not
forth
going to hate on
it,
him for it. I'm just saying how I would be, but I'm not going to hate on a guy who's it's easy. Again, I'm going to give up $3 million just so I can have that great old legacy. Hell no, I get it. I'm just saying
there is something cool about it though. Like a guy who plays for one team for so long and comes back as a conquering hero. Like you see those guys in markets. I wonder how close they really are. That's what I don't know. It seems like the Bills haven't made much of an effort at all to retain him.
You've been covering the NFL for a long time. You've been doing it at a professional level. I'm a podcaster. For the most part, this is a hobbyist thing that I do. I'm not a fanboy on the pod, especially on the podcast. Like I will be the first to rip the Bills, but I am a Bills fan, and I don't try to hide that I'm a Bills fan. I'm not gonna lie. I see some. I don't care about Tremaine Edmonds, by the way. If he goes somewhere else, let him. I agree with everything you said about him. Jordan going to Miami would bother me on a personal level. As a fan, a little bit. It would bother me a little bit. Like if he makes a big play, like especially if it's in Miami and the fans are going nuts because he makes a big hit and jars the ball loose from James Cook. I'm like that, and they keep pointing the game. I'm gonna get pissed off. As a fan, just saying. By the way, I forgot to ask you.
Got Vic Fangio,
huh?
Dialing it up now. Vic Fangio,
Yeah.
one of the best D coordinators.
Were you surprised? I forgot to ask you this. Were you surprised the way Leslie Frazier, from what you've heard, being around the combine, stuff like that? I mean, the timing of it, a little bit surprised?
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
The timing is odd. We're not going to sit here and call Brandon Beane a liar. I mean, he laid out the timeline, right? They were surprised. A week before the combine anyway, said Leslie Frazier, he had taken that time off and said he wanted to step away. But then it gets weird when the announcement is, okay, he'll return to coaching in 2024. But then Beane basically said, yeah, it's not going to be in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, was he, you see this all of the time after bad playoff losses. Somebody is made the scapegoat. Somebody falls on the sword. Usually it happens right after that game. It feels like he was gently nudged out the door, / maybe Frazier wanted to go. Maybe he was a little tired of the same thing every year. You never see winning teams with a quarterback like Josh Allen see this much change on the coaching staff.
Yeah.
You really don't. I mean, Chad Hall going to Jacksonville, both sides of the ball, a lot of coaches just making lateral moves before having the opportunity maybe take advantage of winning a lot of games with Josh Allen. It's strange. I don't know what to make of it, honestly. It surprised me. Here's where it didn't surprise me, though. Al Holcomb was hired as the senior defensive assistant early in the offseason. And Jim Onis got into this on our podcast, right? Remember, Jim Onis, Doug Whaley, they hired Sean McDermott before they were let go after the draft. But Jim said how back then the choice of defensive coordinator was between Al Holcomb and Leslie Frazier. So 6 years later, gets the other guy. So, and he's a Carolina guy. So McDermott, he's had a liking to Al Holcomb for a while.
I had to also ask about Stephon Diggs. By the way, this has been a pretty frustrating offseason as a fan, too, because of stuff like the timing with the Frazier stuff. Stephon Diggs, I get it to an extent. He might be just trolling on Twitter. He's known to do that. I get it. But he seems genuinely not happy right now. And look, he's not getting traded. I mean, if you look at anyone who knows the salary cap, it would cost the Bills like $37 million instantly to trade him tomorrow. So all the talk about him going to Dallas, playing with his brother, maybe down the road, ain't going to be in 2023. But do you get a sense or knowledge? Is he just really still frustrated about the way last season ended? Or is he getting to the point? Because, let's face it, it did happen in Minnesota. He's at least teasing it on social media, and some fans are buying into it more than others. But you get a sense that, like, Stephon Diggs is not happy right now?
Yeah, it sure seems like it.
Yeah.
I think Isaiah McKenzie, and this is at the locker room cleanup day when he was meeting with the local beat writers, mentioned a conversation that he had with Stephon Diggs and how this is just happening again and again and again. You wondered at the moment, was this just a case of the loss being fresh, the wounds being open? We saw the frustration on the sideline, obviously, when he went up to Josh Allen with the arms out. But now it's weeks later, months later, and you're playing these games, unfollowing accounts on Instagram, right? Like you unfollowed the Bills. Usually I would laugh that off as being ridiculous and who gives a shit. But that's kind of how players try to throw their weight around. Kyler Murray did the same thing last offseason, early in the offseason. It's guys that don't contractually have any leverage, like you just laid out. Can't really do anything. He's locked in. They do this stuff. They go on Twitter and Instagram and say cryptic things and follow and unfollow. And so I would be guessing. I don't know if he's just messing around with everybody or if he's literally demanding a trade, but it's weird. It's not normal.
I don't want to see it. You know what I'm saying? I don't like seeing it. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been here for 3 years, and he has quite literally had the 3 most productive receiving seasons in the history of the franchise. His worst year is better than anyone else's best year, including Moles, including Andre Reed. So you don't like to see that kind of stuff. You're talking about Jordan Boyer with the taxes, and he's probably leaving. Evans is leaving. Diggs is unhappy. I don't know if you saw it, but Ed Oliver had a tweet, and then he deleted the Buffalo News screenshot. Someone got a screenshot or something, did a story about it. Pretty much said, if I don't get paid, I'm walking, which, by the way, if he thinks he's going to get a monster contract, get to Steppen. I said that. You get to Steppen.
Yeah, good luck with that, Ed.
Yeah, because he's getting 10 point whatever million this year because he got the 5th-year option. He's got a lot to prove, by the way, to get a long-term big money deal. But point is he's griping. It's like, are we watching like the new 2023 bickering Bills?
These are the little things that kind of add up for any team that kind of signal the closing of a Super Bowl window. Think back to the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks. They won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But you had so much of this stuff. Seth Wickersham wrote a great story out of the loss to the Patriots, the Malcolm Butler play, and just how that really kind of tore that team apart at the seams within. I'm not saying that's the case in Buffalo, but you saw a lot of the similar things on the outside. Guys being unhappy, saying something, then deleting the tweet or backtracking, but believing the first time. And you had an iconic moment there at the 1 yard line when they should have given the ball to Marshawn Lynch. You kind of have that stuff in Buffalo with 13 seconds.
Sure.
And it feels out of the Cincinnati game like they're further away from a Super Bowl than they were the year before because of the state of the roster, the financial ramifications. I'll just say this. Their best chance, their best hope is lean into what you do have, and that's Josh Allen. Quit punting, quit the chip shot field goals, quit drafting defensive ends with all your first round picks. Like, add weapons, go for it, lean in to the. That's why they'll always be a Super Bowl contender if he's in his prime. How long is he going to be in his prime? Right? That not to switch gears, but that's a concern as well. Is okay, he's Cam Newton. Well, Cam Newton was in year 5 or year 6 when he had his unbelievable MVP season in 2015, and then the injuries added up, and he just disappeared. So that would get you a little bit worried about the Super Bowl window too.
Couple of things. We're going to wrap up here live at Imperial Pizza with Tyler Dunne from Go Long. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Now, a lot of times, anytime a player becomes either released or you start to hear trade rumors swirling, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, or even if you're covering the Bills, you start to kind of connect a little bit of dots. I got to ask you this because the guy who runs Imperial Pizza, his name's Dave. Great guy, by the way. He big Derrick Henry guy. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Could you see a scenario where Brandon Beane would pull that trigger? And if so, what kind of fit would that be? Because it's odd. I mean, he's a powerful running back. And so on one hand, I'm like, it's kind of not, doesn't fit this style of offense. On the other hand, you're going to play a nickel defense and have Derrick Henry in the backfield all day? Go ahead. We're going to run for $180 on you each week. And it kind of would fit a little bit of that conservative Sean McDermott nature. I don't know. Do you think there's any piece of that, or is that like?
I kind of love it now that I think about it, because in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill, I mean, they're loading the box to stop Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And he still's averaging over 5 yards a carry and running people over now. Got a lot of miles on the odometer. He's getting up there. You have to think
he's an old 29. It feels like.
God, I mean, he still looks really damn good. If it's 1 year, I don't know what the contract.
Yeah, he's got 1 year left on his deal.
How much would it cost?
About 11 million.
I would absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be that. It's something different. It's something you have to account for. If it's for 1 year, he's got one good year left. He's never faced soft defensive fronts. I've always been a big Derrick Henry fan. I mean, I think he's unlike any running back in the game this generation. Just got like an extraterrestrial out there. Why not? Right? I think that's what it's going to take, though. It's going to take, one or two
Bills
1 year
have been-
deals,
Bills,
right?
Bills have been linked to some well-known running backs over the last few years, and rumored at least trade interest. It was Christian McCaffrey, for some Paul Barkley, Alvin Kamara last year. So I feel like it might make short-term sense. At least-
Short. That's what I'm saying. Like a Juju Smith-Schuster to Kansas City last year,
Sure.
where they got him unbelievably cheap,
Yeah.
and boy, the bang for the buck that they got out of that signing was huge. It's going to be something like that. The right player at the right position, with the right personality, that with the incentive to ball out and have a career year because they want to get paid the next year.
Dalvin Cook, by the way, is reportedly looking to get traded too. His brother plays in Buffalo. That would definitely be interesting. Two more quick things here. Lamar Jackson. What do you see going on with that? What's playing out? It's pretty obvious. Owners do not want to pay him that Deshaun Watson guarantee money, or call it collusion or not collusion, whatever. But it seems like he's going to have a really hard time getting the contract that he wants. Where do you see him ultimately playing next year?
And I use the word collusion lightly, but it sure seems like it. And J.J. Watt, Richard Sherman, a lot of players came out and said this is weird to see team accounts, team Twitter accounts, retweeting reporters saying we don't want anything to do with Lamar Jackson,
right?
And because the NFL does not want anybody following Jimmy Haslam's lead in Cleveland. They don't want fully guaranteed contracts to quarterbacks, let alone $230 million guaranteed. And if I'm Lamar, heck yeah, I'd start there and want more than that. When you're better than Deshaun Watson is right now, I get it. I mean, he should have an agent negotiating for him, so he doesn't have to hear the bad stuff about his game. Right? I mean, an agent is such an important buffer for all of that. I'm sure the relationship between Lamar and Baltimore has gone downhill because they're having the hard conversations directly with Lamar Jackson. Mm-hmm. But I guess where I stand, it's insane to me that it got to this point. It's been 2 years of this. Give me 5 guaranteed years of Lamar Jackson, whatever it costs, even if it takes up a fifth of your salary cap. I think you've got a better shot at winning the Super Bowl in those 5 years than you do hitting reset, trying to start over at quarterback, even with 2 first-round picks that a team would give you. What are you going to do? Break in Tyler Huntley, draft somebody, sign Jacoby Brissett?
Right.
Like, good luck. You did the hard part. You found him. You kind of tripped into him because you took Hayden Hurst ahead of Lamar Jackson in that same draft. I don't know. I feel like they're overthinking this one, and they're really going to regret it if he's not playing quarterback for Baltimore. But it looks like he's not really getting the money he wants out there from another team. What is the offer sheet that he is signed to by another team if it gets to that? I don't know. I have no idea where this is going to go. I guess if I was going to throw a prediction out, I know Washington came out and said they weren't interested. One renegade owner, one rogue owner, Dan Snyder would fit that bill because Dan Snyder wants the Commanders to look nice and pretty to a prospective owner and just try to sell them for $7 billion. Well, if you trade for Lamar Jackson, all of a sudden your controversy-ridden franchise that can't get out of its own way is must-see TV.
Last question here, man. I know that you know very well a certain quarterback who plays for the Packers, who I personally hate very much. I do not like Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers guy at all. But
it's understandable.
That aside, he's going to the Jets, ain't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know when people are listening to this or watching this, but yeah, I'd be surprised if he doesn't go to the Jets at this point. It's Green Bay's moving on. Hell, Bob said it at the site.
Bob again.
3 weeks ago. They've moved on to Jordan Love. They're tired of Aaron Rodgers. Disgusted was the word he used that sent people into a tizzy. But it's true. They've moved on. Everything else is a matter of compensation, trade partner, semantics, right? Making Aaron feel like this is his decision because you're dealing with a different personality down those lines. And the Jets have a desperate owner in Woody Johnson who they whiffed on Sam Darnold. They whiffed on Zach Wilson. They want a veteran for that roster to win now. And they're flying to see. I don't know how it doesn't happen at this point. Nathaniel Hackett, unbelievably close with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, way closer than he was with Matt LaFleur or anybody else in the building. So Hackett's going to give Rodgers carte blanche at the line of scrimmage to do what he wants. I think the Jets just need to know he's bought in. He blew off the offseason last year. He didn't want to work with the young players. Just didn't care, and it showed. Didn't see the field well. The receivers, they couldn't keep up with his audibles and signals, and then his legs weren't underneath him. He just couldn't escape the jams he used to. So if he's rejuvenated and he wants to stick it to people like you and I, Pat, and prove he can still play quarterback at 39, it's worth it for the Jets, and obviously it's worth it for the Packers. They got to move on.
Darkness retreat.
Isn't that funny, though? Like, if you're going on a darkness retreat, fine. Cool. I see the benefits. We're all addicted to screens to a sickening degree. But then just go on the darkness retreat. Just go. Like, you don't need to announce it on national television, return, and while you're only texting the Packers GM, Brian Gutekunst, because you didn't even talk to him, you sit down with Aubrey Marcus and, bare your soul for over an hour about taking dumps in the dark before you even talk to the GM for the fine, darkness retreat, great, but he couldn't wait to tell us all about it.
Tyler, I have emerged from my darkness retreat to end this podcast with a hot take, and this is going to be proof that whether you like to hear it or whether you don't, people watching or listening, I'm not a fanboy, man. This is what I'm going to tell you. The Jets get Aaron Rodgers. I think by the time the offseason's over, you can make a very fair case that I think the Jets might be the best, on paper, the best team in that division. Now, I still think Josh Allen's a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers, and that means a lot. But I like the Jets roster with Zach Wilson right now. It's like, go get a quarterback. Jets are good, man. That defense is good. That front four is good. You got maybe the best corner in football already. Garrett Wilson is great. Breece Hall is really good. The line's all right. I mean, Vera Tucker was hurt last year. They still got some capital.
Becton was hurt.
Yeah. The Jets are for real, man. We're talking Buffalo, Miami, Buffalo. You better throw the Jets in there, especially if they get Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, yeah, as hypercritical as I've been of Aaron Rodgers, I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
He plays at his best when he's pissed off. And he has, it's funny, in the past, he's kind of poo-pooed the argument that he took his game to an MVP level after the Jordan Love pick. And then on this podcast, talking about his darkness retreat, he basically said that was the case, that they drafted my replacement and I won 2 MVPs. This would motivate Aaron Rodgers, right? I do think every quarterback this side of Tom Brady is going to fall off that cliff at 40. It's just inevitable. You see it with everybody. I mean, Manning, Breeze, Marino, Big Ben, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers. They all become shells of themselves at this exact age. So that would worry me. But the team is really good. They've drafted. It's what a dichotomy. I mean, Joe Douglas is drafted so well, but they've just whiffed so terribly at quarterback that this could be a move. I think they're a playoff team. I don't think that they overtake the Bills, but I think the Jets get in the playoffs. I think you have 3 playoff teams: the Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to be MVP Rodgers anymore. He just needs to be adequate, and I think the Jets are going to be very much in the mix. Anyway, that will do it for this episode. Make sure you follow Ty on Twitter at Ty Dunne. Subscribe, go long, go get the book, man. Blood and Guts. I can't call it a great book. Other people can call it
I appreciate the honesty. You're not going to pretend.
I will call it a great book in about 6.5 days from now. No show, well, plenty of podcasts next week on Talking Buffalo, but no live show next week here at Imperial Pizza. I'm going to be in Florida the following week. I'm going to be back, and I'm going to have Matt Marino with me. One more time, thank you very much, Imperial Pizza, for sponsoring this show. The wings were the bomb, as always.
Fantastic. Fantastic wings.
All right, guys, talk to you soon. Have a good weekend. Plenty of football stuff coming up. Again, make sure you check out Ty at Go Long. Talk to you guys later.